for Zainab Ramahi if she can come and speak. Zainab was someone who had put forth an abstract, was accepted for the conference, but denied entry. So I think it's important to also hear from those who intended to join us but couldn't. So.
I recently graduated from the University of Waterloo and was very excited about going not only to the ICCG conference. I was thrilled when I heard, I mean, it's been held all over the world before, and to hear that it was going to be held in Ramallah was like, it blew my mind. And then further, you know, back in February, I think when my abstract was accepted and I prepared to give a presentation, this was obviously something I was looking forward to from an academic perspective, but also as a Palestinian. My father is a Palestinian, and I have been to Palestine many times. My grandmother lives in El-Bira, which is the twin city of Ramallah. It's actually bigger than Ramallah, just a block behind the Palestinian Authority. And I had been as recently as the summer of 2014 for about 4 to 6 weeks. 2 years prior to that, 2 years prior to that as well. This has become a sort of, you know, semi-annual ritual, if you will, that I have come to need, because Palestine is the only place in the world that I have felt like I belong. My mother is of Kashmiri ancestry, and so I come from occupied lands. And there's something unique about Palestine. You know, my Arabic isn't perfect. I do stand out a little bit, but it is, again, the only place in the world that I have felt that I belong. And so after having miserable experiences trying to get in through Tel Aviv and being successful in getting in through Ben Gurion, but enduring incredibly harsh interrogation and whatnot, I kind of decided to give up on that route altogether the last time I went in 2014. So I went through Amman. I flew what I thought was under the radar because there was a group of Palestinian American youth that had been organized to come, and the officers were really preoccupied with that. And so I thought that this was, you know, kind of the way to go. And so I planned for a sort of post-graduation trip that included the conference, that included visiting my sick grandmother. A best friend of mine was going to come, and she's been learning about Palestine and the situation there for a while, and was really intent on witnessing for herself. And so I got to the border, again, these are not declared, but the Israeli-controlled entry point from the Allenby Bridge, or the King Hussein Bridge. At about 2:30 p.m., I arrived at the Israeli terminal and was told, after successive, very short and sweet interrogations, that I thought indicated everything was fine because they would have held me for longer. It was one of the breeziest experiences I had ever had, and I can wait for years if it means I'm going to Palestine. It doesn't matter how hungry or thirsty you are. I'm so excited to be going there. So in my naivety, I thought that the longer I was being held meant the more sure I was going to get in, because why else would they keep me there? But at 10:30 p.m., I was told that I was being denied, and I had a mild heart attack because they're like, you have to go back to Jordan. And I'm like, what do you mean go back to Jordan? Like, I came from Canada. Where should I go back to in Jordan? And, you know, that's not their problem. So after kind of, you know, as a Palestinian, it was a really interesting situation to be on. I can reflect in hindsight and say, I wish I made better use politically of that, you know, moment. But it was a disaster. I mean, for me, it was truly a disaster. Like, what was I supposed to do that night? I'm in, you know, at the edge of no man's land, which is basically, you know, that buffer zone, that security zone between Jordan and Israel. They left me there for another hour. At 11:30, I was escorted onto a coach bus where I sat for another 2 hours, not being told what was going on or when I was going to go back to the Jordanian side. Some random guy drove me home from the Israeli border, not home, drove me to an uncle's house, my father's uncle, who I had met once previously, and I ended up at his house at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, totally unannounced, whatever. I was safe. There's a lot of things that could have gone wrong in that situation. And again, the immediacy of this situation required my emotional state to be fairly distressed, but again, in my naivete, I'm all of like 22 years old. I didn't think I was a security threat to Israel, but they thought otherwise. And a number of different reasons were given for my denial, including that I was a security threat. And so I tried again. I went to the Israeli embassy as I was told to in Amman. I worked through the American embassy. I contacted the organizers of the conference. I think the response from the Americans sums it up best. That was basically like, we're really sorry this happened to you. Good luck. Keep us posted. I'm an American citizen. I'm also a Canadian citizen, but I traveled with my American passport because, you know, they're frankly, better at taking care of their citizens when something happens abroad. But that really put into perspective, you know, who is really in control of that situation. And whatever, so as my hopes kind of diminished, I had to work internally as well from the Ramallah side to get in. It turned out I wasn't getting in after 11 days in Amman, which is miserable. It's an absolute shithole, and I don't recommend anybody go there. Unfortunately, I'm sorry if you're Jordanian. There's a lot of, speaking of neoliberal cities, there's a lot of problems there. I came back and began to reflect on what this experience means in terms of academic freedom. And I think I'm involved in an academic boycott movement at my alma mater, I guess. One of the things that people come, you know, and say to us often as well, aren't you fighting discrimination with more discrimination? Or, you know, how is academic boycott a response to the lack of academic freedom? And I think this exemplifies the reality of the situation, right? By not being able to attend, I mean, not that my ideas were going to be some sort of seminal revolutionary anything, but the fact is that that border stopped the sharing of knowledge, and that's really important, and other borders can do that as well. But I think as academics, as I'm sure many in the audience are, because you were drawn to this event, it's really important to think about the implications of borders on knowledge translation and knowledge sharing, and to keep that, I think, at the forefront of our minds when we respond perhaps to you know, those sort of futile arguments about academic freedom. So I'll keep it short, but I do really appreciate you giving me the chance to kind of say my bit. I know I wasn't the only one who was denied entry, but I think it's really important to put that into perspective as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Zainab, for sharing your experiences with us. I really appreciate it, because that too is part of what it means to hold a conference in Palestine, and you know, relative to other places. And now finally, I think we have the recording working, so I'm going to